When you think about Haikyuu, what comes to your mind? Maybe you think about the sport of volleyball, its amazing character development, or the high, intense matches.
Haikyuu is best known for all of these things and more. But what about these other concepts like self-confidence, growth, and ego? Yes, ego like in the popular sports anime and manga, Blue Lock.
These two series are seen as extremely different, but they actually have a lot more in common than most people think. We'll be exploring Haikyuu through the lens of an egoist.
Let's start with the beginning of Haikyuu. The story starts with Hinata Shoyo, a small and passionate player inspired by Karasuno's legendary Little Giant.
Despite his limited experience and resources, Hinata spent his time in junior high training hard so he could enter a volleyball tournament. By his last year, he was able to create a makeshift team of his friends and underclassmen so that they could compete in their first tournament.
At this very tournament, we meet our other main character, Tobio Kageyama. Hinata's team is paired against Kageyama's team in the first round of this tournament. Kageyama is widely recognized as a talented setter known for his superior skill and egocentric playing style, which earns him the nickname King of the Court. But he earned this title not because of his great skills, but because his teammates saw him as this dictator who terrorized and reigned over the team.
And with all that in mind, Kageyama's team beats Hinata's team, and this wasn't just any loss. It was a complete beatdown. However, their match against each other left them both interested in their skills and sparks a new rivalry between the two.
As time moves on, these two enter high school and they actually become teammates at Karasuno High School, former powerhouse team in the Miyagi Prefecture. They were led by the old coach Ukai and the legendary Little Giant that inspired Hinata.
After old coach Ukai's retirement, this downfall was only temporary as a new era of Karasuno's resurgence was about to begin.
The biggest element of this change was the new first years and our main characters, Hinata Shoyo and Tobio Kageyama. Despite their initial differences as opponents in junior high, they do learn how to trust and rely on one another to achieve their common goal, to win matches.
Their first shared goal was to defeat Tsukishima's team in order to earn their spots for the Karasuno volleyball team.
At first, the duo was struggling to link up and work together, but Tsukishima was acting as an antagonist towards the both of them. These interactions ultimately forced the duo to work together since they finally had a common enemy. As this match continued, Kageyama and Hinata finally began to learn how to sync and they were able to create a chemical reaction, the free quick attack, a play where Kageyama sets the ball perfectly to Hinata's hands and Hinata blindly trusts Kageyama 100% and spikes the ball with his eyes closed.
The pair quickly realized that they both provide something that the other needed to reach their full potential. Throughout the match, the duo would utilize this chemical reaction. However, this free quick attack is extremely flawed because it is a codependent chemical reaction. This is because the foundation of this play limits Hinata's growth as a spiker as it relies completely on Kageyama's genius setting abilities while not really developing Hinata's plays.
This codependent partnership reminds us a lot of Nagi and Reo, especially during the first selection. This is when Nagi was completely relying on Reo as his brain, and even though Nagi had the capabilities to be a standout player on his own, but at this point he wasn't doing any of that because he was just relying on Reo because it was an easier route to quick success. And at this point in the story, this is also happening to Hinata because Kageyama is ultimately limiting Hinata's growth by acting as his brain, just like how Reo is acting as Nagi's brain. And this ultimately happened because they were both tailoring these passes for them in order to execute their own special freak techniques, in this case Hinata the free quick attack, but ultimately this chemical reaction is just limiting Hinata's growth.
And with all that being said, this codependent chemical reaction between the both of them would become crucial for Karasuno's offense. Even though this isn't the best route, this was the first step for the duo working together as Karasuno players. The next opponent is the true antagonist of Karasuno's resurgence. We're talking about Seijo's Break King, Toru Oikawa.
In the last set, Oikawa finally joined the game and he instantly showed his impact at Seijo's heart. He was dominating Karasuno with his serves. While Karasuno was starting to struggle against Oikawa, Hinata actually acknowledged Great King Oikawa's abilities and he saw an opponent so strong that it awakened something within Hinata.
It's the last sequence and Seijo's Kendachi attempts to spike the ball, but he's blocked by Hinata. He then sprints to the other side of the court and Kageyama touches the ball to him. Hinata then spikes it directly past Oikawa, resulting in Karasuno's win. This whole sequence by Hinata was just groundbreaking. Let's dissect it because this is also the first time Hinata successfully blocks a spike and for him to hit the ball with his eyes open. This attack isn't the blind trust codependent free quick attack that we're used to seeing. This time, Hinata stepped up on his own accord and showed his hunger to defeat a great player like Oikawa.
Early on in season 1, I felt like we already got a flow state moment. I mean, this whole situation could even be correlated to Blue Lock's formula to achieving flow state and top performance. Let's review throughout the whole process. At this exact moment, Hinata possessed a hunger hunger or ego, the drive to achieve a reachable goal, which was to defeat Great King Oikawa in this practice match, and this ultimately fired up Hinata and pushed him into a flow state. After achieving this flow state, Hinata crossed paths with another player, Kageyama, who also wants to defeat Oikawa, and these two work together with a shared vision and create a new chemical reaction so good that it brought out their top performance, the broad jump quick attack, a new technique that took Seijo by surprise and showed Hinata's full abilities as a player.
After this practice match, the other senior players, Nishinoya, Asahi, and Karasuno's new coach Ukai, the grandson of the famous Karasuno coach Ukai, will enter the story. Coach Ukai agrees to become the next coach of Karasuno after he learns of the upcoming practice match against Karasuno's former rival, Nekoma High. To learn the strengths of each of the current players, he arranges an exhibition for them.
This practice match was so important because it was also the catalyst of Nishinoya and Asahi fixing their relationship, as well as Asahi regaining his hunger to become Karasuno's ace. In the last sequence, Nishinoya pulls out an amazing save, and this inspires Asahi to overcome his prior fixations and doubts. Seeing this amazing play by Nishinoya, Asahi demands from a set from Suga, and he successfully beats the triple block, smashing the ball past all of them, and this play reinvigorates Asahi, and he awakens his hunger as Karasuno's ace.
This play is another example of a top performance. Asahi's hunger and sense of protagonism drive him to achieve his goal of beating the triple block and shake off his prior fixations. This hyped up Asahi and pushed him to enter a flow state and unleash a monster spike. In this practice match, Asahi's key play was a turning point in his recovery from the trauma of facing Datetek's Iron Wall, allowing him to regain confidence and reclaim his role as Karasuno's ace.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the court, tensions flared between Kageyama and Hinata after Hinata was envious of Asahi being the ace. Due to this, Kageyama ultimately lashes out at Hinata, reverting to his harsh king of the court attitude, telling Hinata to stop acting like this and that he'll never be an ace like Asahi and he should just stick with being a decoy. Though Hinata recognizes some truth in Kageyama's words, he was deeply hurt by this, and as long as he truly wants to aspire to be a player like the little giant, he was not going to be satisfied with just acting as Kageyama's tool and playing as a decoy. This moment ultimately exposes the cracks in their codependent relationship and Hinata's desire to be independent and become a standout player on his own accord.
This match ended with the neighborhood team winning both sets, with Asahi scoring the final points. Ultimately, the match restored Asahi's love for volleyball and highlighted the strengths and weaknesses in Hinata and Kageyama dynamic.
After this practice match, the newly put together Karasuno team go into a training camp where they meet their destined rivals, Nekoma.
And the very next day, both teams would meet for their practice match. Nekoma and Karasuno begin their match with Kageyama and Hinata connecting on a quick attack that gives Karasuno an early lead. In the next play, Kinema sets to Yamamoto, who spikes, but Nishinoya receives it. Hinata runs for another quick, and Inuoka prepares to block. But Kageyama actually sets to Asahi, who scores when Yaku fails to receive his spike.
As the set continues, Nekoma quickly realizes that they're up against a genius setter, so they decide to start marking Hinata so they can ultimately limit Karasuno's offensive prowess. Kema comes up with a strategy to cover one area of the court, causing Hinata to go to the other area without the blockers. This tactic ultimately proved to be very efficient because over time, Nekoma's blocker, Inuoka, got used to Hinata's speed and feints, and he quickly started to block his shots. This change was truly effective because it allowed Nekoma to win the first set, and this is the first time we see the Hinata and Kageyama codependent free quick attack get shut down.
With that new discovery, the second set was much of the same thing, with Hinata getting shut down. However, this adversity was actually a blessing in disguise for him. Kageyama used this as an opportunity to teach Hinata how to do a straight attack, and how to use his eyes to find holes in the opponent's defense. Nekoma and Karasuno played the second set to an epic showdown, but in the end, Karasuno falls just short.
In this practice match between Karasuno and Nekoma, we can see very similar elements of Blue Ox ego-driven environments and how it can shape a player's or a team's playing styles and philosophies. For example, Nekoma can be seen as a restrictive team because these players thrive when they have a specific role or objective, like marking Hinata, while Karasuno can very much be seen as a freedom team. Players on Karasuno excel when they can freely adapt and create multiple different scenarios in order to create the best path to win, like when Hinata and Kageyama adapted to Nekoma's challenge and they started utilizing new techniques like a straight attack or Hinata using his eyes in different ways to find holes in the team's defense.
The two teams are opposites, but because they are opposites, they end up pushing each other to grow and improve. This practice match also reformed their prior rivalry between the two schools. Best of all, Karasuno realizes that they're starting to unite as a team, despite being thoroughly crushed. Karasuno vows to get revenge on the national stage.
The first half of season 1 was all about laying down the foundation for the team and establishing the new Karasuno, the crows that found their wings again, and this did prove to be true at the beginning of the first tournament at the Inter-High prelims. Karasuno's first match was against Tokonami High School,
and everyone quickly realized that Karasuno is back and possibly better than ever. They were able to dominate their match against Tokonami, winning the first set 25-12 and the second set 25-14. They displayed their new weapons and potential, easily winning the match in just 2 straight sets.
After sweeping their opponents, Karasuno would face off against bitter rivals Date Tech.
First set was pretty back and forth, with both sides seeing some success. One of the more impressive plays was Aone blocking Hinata's attack. He was able to stop Asahi early in the set as well.
Date Tech's Iron Wall lived up to the expectations. They came out and put pressure on Karasuno. However, Kageyama knew that this would happen, and he unveiled the new super quick attack, and this gave Karasuno another advantage.
Kageyama used this to his advantage and started to mix this new super quick attack along with other tactics like Asahi's new pipe technique that he learned against Nekomo. Kageyama, Asahi, and Tanaka were able to use Hinata as a decoy and get past the Date Tech blockers. Thanks to this, Karasuno managed to steal the first set.
In set 2, Coach Ukai decides to do a double rotation so Hinata can get away from Aone and Karasuno can find more freedom in their attack. While this does free up Hinata for more quick attacks, it also does mean that Karasuno will have to heavily rely on Asahi to blast through the Iron Wall, as well as Tsukishima to hold up the front.
This change in the rotation does prove to be extremely effective, and Karasuno were able to steadily hold momentum in the second set. However, Hinata goes to serve and commits an error and leaves him in the backcourt with a score of 24-22.
In the final sequence of the set, Asahi overcomes his prior fixation and trauma from losing to Date Tech's Iron Wall, and he demands for the set and smashes through the triple block, ultimately defeating the Iron Wall that held him down, and he won the game for Karasuno, living up to his potential as the team's ace.
Karasuno is able to win the rematch against Date Tech. This was a huge moment for the senior players, especially Asahi, who was able to fully get over this mental wall.
It's important to remember, we did say that this was a battle of concepts. Both teams utilized different philosophies and methods. For example, we know Karasuno is a freedom-based team, and it's already quite clear that Date Tech is the complete opposite. They're a very rigid and defensive-focused team. They very much excel in that restrictive ego environment like Nekoma. They thrive in the structured and task-focused approach, and it's very clear because this perfectly matches Date Tech's philosophy of using the Iron Wall, blocking to restrict and lock down their opponents. The Iron Wall is probably the best representation of a restrictive team, just using whatever they get to focus and hone in on a player, marking them, blocking them, and just trying to destroy them in any way possible.
And this Iron Wall is so successful because the Date Tech players are solely focusing on this one tactic. Their entire defensive strategy revolves around a strong and coordinated blocking system. They use multiple blockers at the net to shut down opposing spikers. This is only possible because Date Tech's players sacrifice their freedom of choice and solely focus on executing the tactic, which is exactly what a restrictive egoist would do.
A true battle of concepts, but this time, Karasuno was able to use their explosive and free adapting offense to beat their opponents and overcome the Iron Wall, which brings jubilation to the senior players because they are finally able to avenge that prior loss. However, Karasuno would hit their first real obstacle in the tournament, Seijo and the great King Oikawa.
During this match, Karasuno was immediately tested by Seijo, especially Kageyama and Hinata. Over time, Seijo was able to adjust to them and neutralize their plays. Kageyama starts to feel pressured as the point gap continues to stay the same. We get this inner monologue from Oikawa. He explains how, unlike him, Kageyama is not the kind of setter who brings out the best in all his teammates. Oikawa's teammates, on the other hand, all trust his sets, and he says that bringing out the best in everyone is what makes you a true setter.
This moment reminds us of Blue Lock's egoist themes of geniuses and talented learners. In Blue Lock, geniuses and talented learners represent two contrasting approaches that players go on, by showing how geniuses are often relying on their innate natural abilities, while talented learners rely on logic and learning how to adapt so they can become great players. It's also important to remember that neither approach is better or worse, but geniuses can beat talented learners through their natural and innate abilities, while talented learners are able to surpass geniuses by understanding their weaknesses and developing logical strategies to exploit them.
And taking that into consideration, we believe that Oikawa was acknowledging a similar approach between him and Kageyama's differences. Kageyama is the genius who uses unconventional innate abilities, while Oikawa is more like the talented learner who excels by understanding and developing new tactics based on their observations.
Neither approach is better or worse than the other. Geniuses can beat talented learners, and talented learners can beat geniuses. But at this very moment, Oikawa is beating Kageyama as a talented learner by successfully observing and exploiting Kageyama's weaknesses through a logical approach. Through the first set, Oikawa was leading Seijo, and it caused them to gain the momentum. Seijo's team was able to steadily anticipate Kageyama's movements and shut down Karasuno's attempts. This frustration continued to build up, and it caused Kageyama to revert to his king of the court mode. Seeing Kageyama self-destruct, Coach Ukai was left no choice but to sub him out and put Suga into the game.
This substitution for Kageyama isn't enough to create a comeback, and it ultimately seals the first set for Seijo. However, the most important thing wasn't winning the set. It was to create a learning experience for Kageyama. While watching the rest of the set, Kageyama was shocked as he watched Suga's real ability as a setter. Suga not only tries his hardest in setting, but encourages his teammates, which boosts the team's morale and strength.
Kageyama even sees Suga as a similar presence as Oikawa. Obviously, Suga isn't as good as a player as Oikawa is ability-wise, but he delivers stability and a sense of confidence with his teammates. He acts like a true setter, and Kageyama realizes that this is what he is missing so he can be a true setter. Time on the bench proved to be very valuable, and Kageyama realizes what he's missing.
If it's not clear enough, we also believe Suga would be a talented learner, just like Oikawa. His playing style and approach to the game is quite similar to Oikawa's, and he definitely doesn't have any innate or superior natural abilities like the geniuses.
Since we're speaking about genius and talented learners again, we also want to say that we think Hinata is a genius. We say this because Hinata has exceptional natural athleticism like a genius. He's a natural monster, so you can see that he's very much moving and acting like a genius and not a talented learner.
After losing the first set, Suga was able to get a head start on Seijo, and this was actually very shocking to them. Their plan to neutralize Hinata by focusing on his calls eventually stopped working. The Suga and Hinata combo is actually wicked underrated. It's a perfect talented learner and genius chemical reaction.
Thanks to Suga's efforts, Karasuno took an early lead in the second set. Unfortunately for him, Oikawa was able to adjust to this change and proved why he's the great king because he was able to bring Seijo back to the game. Seijo was able to regain the lead after Kindachi blocks Hinata, and it's clear that Suga's time is coming to an end. Asahi knows that he can't let Suga go out like this, so he demands another set from Suga, and Suga does so, setting the ball to Asahi. Being the ace that he is, he steps up and spikes the ball past Kindaichi and helps Karasuno regain their composure. With that being his last play, Kageyama subs back in for Suga, and we see Karasuno's fired up to win this set, with one of the biggest surprises actually being Kageyama using his new mentality and thinking that he learned from Suga to work together with Tsukishima and win the second set.
The final set begins with both teams having claimed one set each, setting the stage for a climactic decider. Right from the start, Aoba Josai asserts dominance, demonstrating Seijo's depth of skill and creative playmaking. A second well-executed sequence gives them a 3-point lead, pushing Karasuno's coach Ukai to call an early timeout to steady his team.
Using this time to recompose his team, the set restarts. Hinata immediately makes an impact using a broad jump quick attack to bypass the blockers and score again, a move that shocks Seijo and ultimately shifts the momentum. With the match intensifying, Hinata's presence as decoy is becoming crucial for Karasuno's success. His movements create new scoring opportunities for Tanaka and Asahi, and they step up to tie the game 15-15, signaling a huge momentum swing in Karasuno's favor.
Aoba Josai, sensing the shift, calls a timeout to strategize. Interestingly, they decide not to mark Hinata directly, choosing instead to focus on receiving his attacks. After this timeout, Hinata is momentarily neutralized when Matsuri successfully receives his spike. Oikawa regains control with a smart setter dump and then a net serve that results in another point, extending Seijo's lead.
In the critical turn of events, Coach Ukai uses this moment to sub in his first ever pinch server, Yamaguchi. With all the weight on his shoulder, Yamaguchi is terrorized by this moment. Unknowing that he's gonna succeed or not, he goes up and tries his jump floater, but he ultimately fails.
The moment is emotionally crushing for Yamaguchi, who walks off in tears, a poignant depiction of the pressure young players face. Despite the setback, Daichi rallies the team and the fired up Karasuno narrows the gap. In a defining moment, Tanaka's spike is blocked, but he manages to keep the play alive with the foot save. This leads to Hinata scoring after a flying receive. Seijo responds quickly and reaches match point at 24-22 with a fast attack.
Karasuno refuses to give up, and Asahi steps up, spikes to gain another point, letting Tanaka serve, and they lead to this tight rally where Kageyama, under immense pressure, actually delivers one of the craziest plays of the game, a one-handed set to Hinata, who scores on the spike and ties the game 24-24, easily one of the best moments of the match. A genius x genius chemical reaction that completely baffles everyone in the stadium as well as the Seijo team. Kageyama sets up a beautiful, almost impossible play, and of course only Hinata is the one who's able to step up and finish it off. True genius moves. I can't believe what we've been seeing so far.
Right away, Seijo's coach calls another timeout, aware of the threat Karasuno now poses. The intensity reaches a fever pitch. Hinata continues to be relentless, and in one crucial play, he feints instead of spiking. during the go-ahead point. However, Iwazumi immediately responds with a back attack, tying the game. The score just keeps climbing as both teams refuse to back down. Both teams are playing out these incredible plays, and the game is just neck and neck.
The score eventually hits 31-31, and it's clear that everyone is getting tired. But unfortunately for Karasuno, Oikawa steps up and he's ready to serve. The game goes on, and the team is ultimately going back and forth, and out of nowhere, the person you would least expect steps up, and Kunimi comes in out of nowhere and scores a feint, putting Seijo at match point at 32-31. This move baffles everyone, especially Kageyama. He was unraveled by this moment because Kunimi is not the type of person to step up and try for these big moments. Karasuno, desperate to stay into the game, Kageyama decides to use a one last gamble, their signature codependent free quick attack. We all think that this is going to be the moment that Hinata and Kageyama get back into the game, but unfortunately, Seijo was ready for this moment, and the Seijo blockers block Hinata, ending their dreams and ending the match with a final score of 33-31 with Seijo's victory.
Kageyama and Hinata's codependency and underdevelopment is similar to Nagi and Ryo's relationship, especially what we were witnessing at Manshine City. Nagi and Ryo are trying to find ways to be independent of each other so that they can evolve into better players. The same is happening to Season 1's Kageyama and Hinata after losing that match to Seijo. The duo realizes that they must grow from this loss and the feeling of despair in order to become stronger.
Hinata and Kageyama finally experience true despair, one of the most important elements of themes in Blue Lock. Ego states that only those with the talent of despair can reach the highest level. Everyone who plays sports will experience defeat at some point in their lives. That being said, with every loss, a person must face a crossroad between reality and their dreams. After experiencing this defeat to Seijo, Hinata and Kageyama realize that the most important thing to do is that they must learn from this loss in order to continue to achieve their goals. They can learn and grow from this situation and become stronger so they can accomplish their dreams, and this ultimately motivates the duo, and they're ready to overcome any adversity in their path in order to fulfill their dreams.
This experience was vital for Kageyama and Hinata's development as well as the whole Karasuno team. The loss to Seijo was actually the biggest blessing in disguise for Karasuno. This loss became the turning point for this team, and it pushed them to reassess their strengths and weaknesses, ultimately setting them on a path to become better players and a better team. So early on, even in Season 1, we're just seeing these egoist-like elements all over the place.
The most important things were definitely the match against Seijo, because that was the first true obstacle in their path. That was the real loss, the feeling of despair, that brought them to rock bottom and how they're going to grow, just like how we've seen so many successful players in Blue Lock grow. With that being said, we can't underestimate the importance of the loss of Seijo because it completely revitalized Karasuno and was the catalyst of their resurgence and transformation.
The core themes of Season 2 and onwards are very much aligned with Blue Lock. There are moments where we see chemical reactions, ego types, flow, and even evolutions from the player. Haikyuu and Blue Lock are more alike than you would probably think, and I'm hoping you're starting to see that so far.
After this loss to Seijo, Karasuno enters another intense training camp along with Nekama, but this time they'll be joined with other top teams like Fukurodani, Shinzen, and Ubakawa High School. All these volleyball teams will be conjugating together and they'll be training in order to lock in and heavily improve their skills. Basically just another Project Blue Lock. This training camp is going to be their best catalyst into developing and becoming the strongest versions of themselves.
The despair after the loss to Seijo formed a new hunger within the Karasuno team and pushed them to grow into better players. Prior to this training camp, Kageyama and Hinata run into Ushijima, captain of Shiratorizawa Academy's team and Oikawa's main rival. Ushijima claims that the only good player from Seijo is Oikawa. Hinata takes Ushijima's attitude as an insult to Karasuno.
As the conversation continued, Ushijima was losing interest and he tries to walk away, and then out of nowhere, a stray ball bounces out of the gym. He jumps to grab it, but a fired up Hinata steps up and jumps way above him and beats him to the ball, grabbing it and shocking Ushijima. This was a cold moment by Hinata. He's getting a big egoist moment in the beginning of Season 2. Hinata introduced himself once again to Ushijima after being rudely disrespected by him, and he declares that Karasuno will defeat him and Shiratorizawa in order to make nationals. And the reason why we double down on this so much is because Hinata's glare and declaration to Ushijima marked the true beginning of his transformation from Kageyama's tool into a standout individual.
In Season 2, the theme of pushing through perceived weakness and using these experiences like despair to grow as an individual reminds us a lot of Blue Lock's second selection. Players are driven to prove their value as individuals and win on their own so that they can become a powerful asset to the overall team. This was evident during the training camp arc. On the first day, Karasuno suffered many losses against the other teams. Even with one victory, it was a close match and Shinzen were able to predict Hinata's Kageyama's quick attacks. It's due to these interactions that Karasuno were forced to change if they wanted to reach national.
During the camp, everyone at Karasuno was realizing their weaknesses, and they noticed that they had to change in order to become stronger. Especially Hinata. He stepped up and declared that he wanted to act on his own accord as a spiker, and this was a major moment for Hinata's character, because initially, he was just doing his best for the team, and he was just blindly trusting Kageyama for the free quick attack. But at this point in his journey, Hinata's ego wanted him to step up and be able to score on his own. He wanted to fully open his own eyes and become his own person, not a tool for Kageyama's sets. This selfish desire from Hinata even divided the team, as Kageyama argued against Hinata that changing his approach could ultimately destroy the Karasuno team. This ultimately led to the two of them clashing and having a heated argument, and these two were slowly trying to divide.
This is massive because Hinata is showing his sense of protagonist and how he wants to be a star in his own regard. He doesn't want to rely on the codependent partnership with Kageyama anymore. Haikyuu deals with ego more than people realize. For instance, during the training camp arc, Asahi told Hinata with his presence that the ball was his. That smile he gave definitely was his ego coming out.
Haikyuu gives a lot of these moments and little bits and little references. I don't think at first a lot of people would think about it because obviously Haikyuu came first before Blue Lock, but a lot of these themes that Blue Lock explore with their egoists and these players having an ego and wanting to grow and improve, you see a lot of the Haikyuu players have a lot of those exact same feelings and moments. Haikyuu explores a lot of these underlying messages in the topic of how individualism can make or break ideals for a team. Thankfully, this change ultimately had a positive effect because it forced everyone to step out of their comfort zone. Especially Kageyama, he went out and actively sought advice from Oikawa, something he would never do before, but Kageyama was showing his desire to become a true setter so he could support the team and bring out the full potential of the team, something that former Kageyama would never do. And we're ultimately seeing that the training camp, the loss, this feeling despair, is forcing all of them to change and become better for themselves and for the team.
We even see other players on the team experiment and try new techniques. Eventually, even Tsukushima is inspired by the team's hunger, which was all thanks to Tadashi. Everyone in Karasuno is stepping up and trying to improve as individuals so that they can become a stronger team.
This was a truly beautiful moment in their journey because Karasuno stepped up on so many different levels, and after this training camp, they were just excelling on a whole new level, using all these new techniques, growing, and just using everything that they've learned from the training camp, from that loss to Seijo, to just overcome all their opponents beforehand. They were able to defeat many other teams like Wakatani Minami, Jozenji, Kakugawa. All these teams were just pillars in front of Karasuno when the time came. They were able to use all their experiences to excel as players and as a team, and it got them to exactly what we've all been waiting for, the rematch between Seijo.
The first set begins with Oikawa serving first with his usual precision, setting the tone for a very fast-paced rally. However, the set is quickly marked by moments of brilliance from Karasuno, especially from Nishinoya. It sets up Asahi's powerful spike, earning Karasuno the first point.
The game continues with both teams trading points. Kageyama's new sense of confidence and Tanaka's powerful spikes helped Karasuno eventually gain a slight edge. Of course, Hinata's eagerness to get involved was super evident, and his determination was just contagious, and he was just ready to contribute in any way possible to fuel the team's success. However, despite this new sense of energy and confidence, Seijo's defense was still tough to break, with many players making crucial saves and blocks in order to stop Karasuno's efforts.
As Karasuno gains a lead, Seijo adjusts, realizing the quick attack is a key factor. They attempt to counter this by adjusting their defense. This rises tension as both teams exchange points with increasing intensity.
Hinata was fired up by this moment, and he remembers his advice from Suga, and he used it to successfully block Kindachi's quick attack and giving Karasuno the advantage once again. Seijo was finally able to break the tension, and Oikawa steps up with a serve. However, to all of our surprise, his serve lands out of bounds and Karasuno gets the set point.
With everything on the line, Seijo responds with their final substitution, bringing Kiyotani into the game, adding an unpredictable element to the match. Kiyotani charges forward with a powerful spike, but the ball lands out, and in a stunning twist, Karasuno secures the set and the match with a 25-23 win.
The biggest surprise in this first set wasn't Karasuno winning, it was actually the addition of this new mysterious player, Kiyotani. I'm assuming he's a genius because he has this insane aura and innate abilities, and he very much lives up to that because in the second set, he steps up and creates an insane cross shot that just breaks everyone's expectations.
Kiyotani continues to showcase his skill with a series of impressive spikes, putting Seijo ahead, but Karasuno doesn't back down here, and despite the pressure, they keep fighting, with Suga's substitution providing a shift in momentum. As the score tightens, Seijo leads thanks to Oikawa's cunning plays and Kiyotani's explosive spikes.
Coach Yukai decides to to give Yamaguchi a moment of redemption. He puts in Karasuno's pinch server once again against Seijo, but this time Yamaguchi steps up and plays the role of an ace as the pinch server. As soon as he gets into the game, Yamaguchi steps up and makes crucial serves, and he's ultimately able to tie the game 23-23 and give Karasuno a new lifeline.
However, Oikawa counters, pushing Seijo ahead once again. Despite Karasuno's hard fight, Seijo takes the set after Iwazumi lands a powerful spike that Karasuno just can't return. With Seijo taking the set, the match is now tied, setting the stage for a final high-stakes showdown.
In the third and final set, Karasuno and Seijo instantly started the battle out fiercely, with both teams exchanging points back and forth. Neither teams were willing to let go of the edge, and they were just trying to prove that they were the ones who earned to play against Shiratorizawa.
As the set progresses, the score remains tight and both teams are displaying great skill. Karasuno's fighting very hard to stay ahead, with Hinata finally showing a pivotal spike after Kageyama sets him up perfectly. The match intensifies as both teams reach match point. However, Karasuno, led by Suga's strategic serves, are able to tie the score at 24-24.
The game culminates in an intense final exchange, leading to a thrilling moment where Hinata gets another moment similar to the last match, where he's able to get the ball from Kageyama, but this time, Hinata, using all of his new experiences, acting like a genius and a talented learner, utilizes this new logic and innate ability to perfectly spike the ball off Kindashi's hands, ultimately winning the blast point for Karasuno and getting their revenge against Seijo.
One of the biggest individual changes was Kageyama acting like a genius to more of a genius and talented learner hybrid. He uses his prior experiences, losses, and advice from talented learners like Suga and Oikawa to evolve and become a true setter.
We also saw this in Hinata as well. Hinata stepped up immensely on his own, finally acting as his own stand-up player as an individual, and then utilizing all these things that he learned, acting more logically and not just like a pure genius like in that first match. Him and Kageyama came a very far way from being these talented rookies, and they now look like true volleyball heroes. They look like egoists. They're playing out to their true potential and they're winning. They're beating everyone that they needed to face. They used despair to their advantage, and now they're achieving top performances and destroying the people that they could never destroy before. This is a truly beautiful moment for their journey.
The Blue Lock manga even suggests that a player's true potential, whether being a genius or a talented learner, can be unlocked by understanding and collaborating with their opposite. Geniuses can benefit from the insights and tactics of talented learners, while talented learners can improve their game by studying the plays of geniuses. This happened to Kageyama after initially losing to Oikawa in the first match. He went out of his way to bring a more logical approach to his game and stop relying on his natural talent. This change led him to evolve and avenge his loss to Oikawa.
Oikawa is one of my favorite players from Haikyuu, but that being said, I definitely see Oikawa as his ultimate egoist. His ego was the source of all of his abilities, but unfortunately, he is a setter who played for a team that couldn't meet his standards. There's no one on Seijo that could live up to his abilities and probably help him transcend to the next level and help him evolve past his current level. I would say that's also one of the biggest differences between him and Kageyama, because Kageyama had other geniuses like Hinata who could keep up with him and help him push and grow as an individual. However, Seijo just didn't have any standout players like Hinata who could ultimately reach these standards and allow Oikawa to further evolve. And I would say that's one of the biggest reasons why Seijo lost to Karasuno and why they were never able to beat Ushijima and Shiratorizawa.
Oikawa might be this complete setter, but his team didn't have the abilities to support and push him. Yes, Oikawa as an individual is an amazing talent, but Oikawa can't carry his Seijo team as a setter like how Ushijima can as an ace.
It's one of the brutal truths in sports. Depending on your position and also depending on your team and what you can do as an individual, you might not be able to carry the team like some other people. But that being said, Karasuno also showed why being a team full of egoists is so much more important than being a single individual egoist like Oikawa or Ushijima. They were able to evolve all together, and they all had the shared common goal, which allowed them to all reach these top performances and win on such a high level, because they all had the same goal, they all had the same dream with defeating Seijo, but also growing as players and for the team of Karasuno. It's been such a long journey and they fully deserve it. But that being said, their next challenge will be Ushijima and Shiratorizawa. With that, we head into Season 3, one of the most anticipated battles, the famous Shiratorizawa and their super ace Ushijima versus Karasuno.
He was the #1 ace in the Miyagi prefecture and ranked among the country's top 3 aces. His spikes are characterized by brute strength, as Ushijima is capable of blowing away opposing blocks and receives through sheer power alone.
In a way, Ushijima reminds us a lot about Baro from Blue Lock. Baro and Ushijima are arguably two of some of the best scorers in their retrospective series, and and they can also be viewed as complete powerhouses who reign as the kings of their teams. Ushijima very much rules the court with a similar presence as Baro, the way he wants to control as the king and just show his brute strength.
Back to the match. Remember, Seijo has never been able to defeat them, so this team really had to dig deep to find ways to win.
The match begins and Shiro Torizawa dominates the first set against Karasuno. This was largely due to Ushijima. He was completely overwhelming the defense, especially Nishinoya. They struggled to contain Ushijima.
Karasuno begins to understand the challenges of facing a powerful left-handed ace like Ushijima, and they slowly adjust, with players like Tsukishima analyzing block timing and Nishinoya adapting to Ushijima's unique spin.
The second set began with Karasuno trying to stay composed despite Ushijima's dominance. Even though they're starting to get back into the game, Shiro Torizawa's other unpredictable character, Tendo, starts coming in and he starts being an effective blocker.
Tendo's ability to read and anticipate plays causes trouble for Karasuno, but Kageyama begins countering this with clever misdirection. The battle escalates as both teams trade points, and Karasuno's resilience and teamwork begin wearing down on Shiro Torizawa.
Karasuno was continuing to adapt using smart plays like synchronized attacks and improved total defense, especially with Tsukishima's blocking. Waiting for his moment of opportunity, Tsukishima ultimately blocks Ushijima for the final point of the set, earning a dramatic victory for Karasuno.
This was Tsukishima's egoist moment. He arrived at the most critical moment and accomplished the impossible by blocking Ushijima's spike and winning the second set for Karasuno.
This moment can't be undervalued because Tsukishima's play gave Karasuno hope and allowed them to stay in the game. Winning the second set was mandatory for Karasuno after losing that first set, and it really gave them a true chance in this game. Tsukishima was becoming that key player, and it seemed like he stepped up into a flow state moment and he got the job done for his team.
On top of all that, Tsuki finally has his own special moment and he's officially hooked on volleyball. The third set concludes with Ushijima overpowering Karasuno and scoring the final point, winning the third set for Shiro Torizawa. Afterward, Nishinoya asserts his pride and resolve as a libero, declaring that when it comes to facing Ushijima's power, he is the one equal to the ace.
Karasuno might be 2 sets down right now, but they're still hungry and they're still waiting for their chance to beat Shiro Torizawa. Nishinoya especially is just driven to a complete ego state.
Karasuno opens the fourth set strong after Goshiki's serve goes out. We see Tsukishima and Tendo clash over blocking styles, symbolizing the larger theme of strategy versus instinct.
We think this is also an important moment to point out that Tsukishima might seem like a restricted player, but we can't forget he's with Karasuno and he's using his blocking in different ways. Tsukishima is very much adaptable and he's very free-flowing. He uses his blocks in many different ways to help his team. He's not only just getting complete shutdown blocks like how he did against Ushijima, he's also getting these one-touch blocks which ultimately keeps the rally going, gives Karasuno chances, and he's also using his blocks to cut off courses so Nishinoya can step in and play the hero role. But that being said, we see that the game is fiercely continuing, back and forth scoring with both teams putting everything on the line. We see Goshiki make some notable plays for Shiro Torizawa. Karasuno is staying competitive throughout all these situations, using smart tactics like repositioning for a better defense and just using their high-flying, free-flow attacking style as well.
And as the set progresses, both teams push to their limits. Karasuno survives a match point and they continue to rally with determination.
Once Karasuno hits the match point, we know that this is their moment, and in the dramatic final play, Kageyama sets a risky toss to Hinata, and he scores with a surprise left-handed spike, and this takes everyone by surprise, and Karasuno is able to steal the fourth set, and they're confidently heading into the final fifth set.
The fifth set begins with both teams playing cautiously, knowing that there is a shorter format, first to 15 and win by 2. Shiro Torizawa leans on their ace Ushijima, who immediately asserts dominance with powerful left-handed spikes. Karasuno must maintain composure here.
Both teams are just trading points in these fierce back and forth rallies.
And as the score goes forward, Tsukishima emerges as a defensive hero. His earlier reads on Ushijima completely pay off, and he appears to have Ushijima figured out. His court awareness and timing are at their peak right now.
Unfortunately, Tsukishima does pick up an injury. As the set progresses, both teams are locked in.
The score has remained pretty neck to neck, but the one that turned the tides for Karasuno was the team's guardian, Nishinoya. Nishinoya stepped up on defense and made a ridiculous double save. And after this, Kageyama sets up Asahi and he blasts past Ushijima's block and wins the match point for Karasuno.
With that, the score is 2019. Karasuno has match point. With everything on the line, Karasuno decides to take a risk and gamble on the synchronized attack.
This final moment actually centers around Hinata, and he does something unexpected here. He actually delays his jump, waits for the blockers to commit, and then spikes through the gap with pinpoint timing. It's a very subtle strategic move that showcases how much he has grown as a player.
He is still moving and playing like a genius, but he is also utilizing the thinking and logical approach of a talented learner. He's further displaying his evolution and growth as an individual by using genius athleticism, but also a logical approach and high game IQ.
A perfect culmination of everything that he's learned on this journey.
Karasuno wins the final set 21-19, defeating the powerhouse Shiratorizawa and destroying the ultimate egoist Ushijima. Karasuno has finally regained their wings as they head to nationals.
As preparations for the upcoming spring tournament begin, the team members start to take different paths that contribute to their own individual growth. Kageyama is invited to this prestigious All-Japan youth training camp.
While this is all going on, Hinata is feeling left behind and very anxious because he sees that other players like Tsukishima and Kageyama are being recognized for the talents and they're rising above him while he didn't even earn an invite.
Hinata impulsively crashes the Miyagi training camp even though he wasn't invited. It was here that he was denied the chance to play, but he instead humbles himself and becomes a ball boy. This actually works out and turns into a valuable learning experience. By being able to observe players closely and mimicking their techniques, Hinata begins to truly grasp the core fundamentals of volleyball beyond spiking.
While Hinata is quietly evolving, Kageyama is experiencing his own trials at the All-Japan Youth Training Camp. This camp serves as a crucial step in his development as a setter. Kageyama's participation in the training camp can also be viewed as why he starts to change his views of his teammates and the expectations he places on them, and overall leading to a change in his approach to the game.
Once the camps conclude, a team reunites, with Kageyama and Hinata exchanging insights from their experience. Hinata surprises the team by successfully receiving one of Kageyama's notoriously powerful serves, a clear indicator of his growth during this time at the camp. The team soon engages in a practice match against Date Tech.
During this intense practice match with Date Tech, each Karasuno player pushed themselves to improve, with Kageyama especially taking on a crucial role in this. After Nishinoya successfully receives the ball, Kageyama bluntly tells him to just get out of the way, and this sparks a brief confrontation between the two. Though Nishinoya quickly understood Kageyama's point of how he was blocking the back row hitter's path and how he was overall limiting the team's attack, Tanaka had to call out Kageyama for his harsh tone. And overall, Kageyama was just confused on how no one else was able to see this, and he didn't think he deserved to say sorry or anything like that.
Frustration builds as hitters fail to score, and Kageyama snaps at Asahi, telling him to just score already after a missed spike. The moment is a harsh echo of Kageyama's troubled junior high pass, as he's visibly shaken as he realizes he has momentarily reverted to his old self.
Despite his return to a more king of the court-like presence, Kageyama's teammates, especially Hinata, decide not to reject him but embrace his intense drive. The team knows that Kageyama's egocentric playing style mentality is needed for the team's evolution. Kageyama is being accepted by Karasuno because they are a team filled with egoists. They all understand that ego, hunger, determination, all these things are needed if the team wants to have a shared winning vision and go far in nationals.
The match against Date Tech concludes with Karasuno adapting and overcoming the challenge, showcasing their growth in both skill and synergy. The moment builds as the team finally heads to nationals, where they win their first round match in dominant fashion.
Yes, Karasuno was able to make quick work out of Tsubakihara. However, the real test waits in the next round, where Karasuno faces Inarizaki. This matchup marks another significant turning point in the story, setting the stage for one of the most thrilling and high-stakes matches in the series.
Karasuno is finally about to face off against Inarizaki, a team known for its strong individuals and unique style, particularly the Miya twins, Atsumu and Osamu, and Japan's top 5 ace, Aran.
First set begins with Atsumu Miwa serving the ball, and honestly, he is a complete Sith Lord because this man comes out of nowhere, demanding silence from the crowd, displaying what kind of egoist he is, and just drops this killer service ace. This moment introduces him as a near villainous figure, charismatic, ego-driven, and immensely talented.
Atsumu is basically an evolved Oikawa in terms of setting, serving, and overall playing ability with Kageyama's mentality. He is Japan's best high school setter and server. Add his playing abilities with his intense and competitive mentality, and you have another talented learner and genius setter like Kageyama. This is another battle of ego-driven king setters.
Fortunately for Karasuno, Atsumu missed his next serve, and this gave them a brief opening to take momentum back in this match. The next few rallies spiral into more errors from both sides. It seems like Inarizaki is getting the momentum first, and they're starting to run away at the beginning of the set. Karasuno is able to adapt, and they start to overcome this adversity, and Hinata is actually able to score by redirecting a spike away from the block. Hinata is trying to show all the tips that he learned from the training camp and show that he's trying to act more like a genius and a talented learner.
As Hinata excels, he secretly inspired Atsumu. He's just absolutely bewildered by his abilities and the free quick attack. It seems like Inarizaki has all the momentum, and in this moment, Atsumu and Osamu shock Karasuno by executing their own version of the free quick, proving that they can match Karasuno's Karasuno's signature weapon.
They were able to produce a flow-x-flow chemical reaction, and honestly, this proves that the twins must be freedom egoists, because who else can just adapt and create new winning formulas like this on the fly? And it just seems like the twins can do just almost anything.
And after a sequence of momentum swings in the first half of the set, Karasuno eventually begins to stabilize.
During these intense rallies, the Mia twins attempt to replicate another free quick attack, but Tsukishima decides to step in and he uses reblocking to shut down their twin quick attack. That being said, there is one Karasuno player who is suffering from all this pressure. Tanaka has not been playing well throughout this game.
To relieve some of this pressure, Coach Ukai brings in Kinoshita to serve. Hinata successfully blocks Osamu's spike. Karasuno is able to answer back and tie the score. Coach Ukai makes a crucial change here, bringing in another pinch server in Yamaguchi. After shaking off his nerves, he lands a jump float ace, causing trouble for Anan. Anan recovers on the next serve, Karasuno counters. In a scramble, Daichi receives, and when the ball dangerously drifts towards Inarizaki's side, Kageyama goes to chase it down, sending it back for Asi to spike off Genjima's hand, giving Karasuno a set point.
Another brilliant flow state moment. Kageyama only had his eyes on the ball, and with it being such a critical moment in the set, he delivered the ball to the ideal spot for Karasuno's ace, and Asahi lived up to his hunger and potential as Karasuno's ace, and he won an important set point for his team. Asi's next to serve, and he lets out a rocket of a serve, but it's well received by Inarizaki's libero, and Atsumu uses this moment to set to Osamu, but the set is slightly off, and Osamu has to improvise with a left-handed spike, and ultimately Nishinoya is able to receive it, and throughout these plays, there's a rapid series of exchanges. Tanaka tries to do a line shot, but unfortunately for him, the ball lands just out of bounds and keeps Narizaki alive due to his failure.
Tsukishima serves, barely clearing the net, and as Hinata and Tanaka prepare to block, their positioning forces Osamu into a straight line spike. Daichi is able to receive this cleanly, setting up the final moment. Tanaka calls for the ball. Emerging from despair, it nails a sharp cross shot, which clinches the set for Karasuno.
He was the last piece in Karasuno's attack, and he lived up to his own potential as a shadow ace. And it was a true win for Tanaka and Kageyama, because Kageyama as a setter, he was able to step up and highlight his growth and evolution as King Kageyama. He entrusted the moment to Tanaka and created a new chemical reaction that pushed him into a flow state, and their combined efforts created the cross shot for Tanaka and win that first set.
But now it's time for the second set. Karasuno and Inarizaki continue their intense rivalry, with both teams giving it their all.
The second set proves to be a tougher challenge for Karasuno than we anticipated. Inarizaki's relentless offense and defense starts to overpower them, and despite Karasuno's valiant efforts, they are unable to secure a win in the set.
The reason why Inarizaki was able to maintain cool heads and stability was due to their captain, Shinsuke Kita, entering the match. His presence on the court helps Inarizaki regain their composure, while preventing Karasuno from scoring in situations they would have usually scored in.
Kita is also very aware of his teammates' habits or egocentrism, including the twins' competitiveness. His presence alone turned Inarizaki to a much scarier team.
It's clear from this that Kita is a talented learner and utilizes his rational plays to stabilize the team. This allows his teammates to play at their fullest potential, and arguably the team is at their best when he is on the court.
The final set starts with Atsumu Miya's unpredictable jump float serve, making the ball curve sharply, and it seems like it even freezes in front of Nishinoya's face. Atsumu is doing such a great job at serving that he's causing Nishinoya to feel despair, and even shows a rare moment of vulnerability for Nishinoya.
Meanwhile, Karasuno's coach Ukai has anticipated Inarizaki's strategy. By tweaking their rotation to put Tsukishima against the Miya twins, Karasuno aims to shut down their dangerous quick attacks.
And as the game continues, both sides are fighting for control. It's clear that Karasuno is going to need another factor, so Coach Ukai subs in Kinoshita again to serve as a pinch server, but ultimately his serve fails and he's quickly subbed out.
Suga reassures him that there will be more chances in the future. Nishinoya's arc deepens when Atsumu deliberately targets him again. This time he pulls off a perfect overhand receive, a skill he once feared. This moment is deeply personal, as he had previously confided this fear to Kinoshita, who had encouraged him to push past it, giving Kinoshita his quiet epic moment.
As the match tightens, Karasuno struggles against Inarizaki's tempo changes and unpredictable tactics. When Inarizaki is in the lead, the Miya twins stun everyone by performing a reverse version of the minus tempo quick attack. Osamu acts as an emergency setter, and he sets the ball to Atsumu, and in a crazy turn of events, they are able to successfully pull it off. The twins create another level of a flow-x-flow chemical reaction, bringing out all these top performances, and Osamu sets the ball perfectly to Atsumu, and they deliver one of the craziest plays in the set.
They were gaining a steady lead, and it felt like Karasuno was on their way out. This wasn't until Hinata shocked everyone with a perfect receive from one of Aran's powerful spikes. This sparks a renewed fire in Karasuno.
This hunger to prove himself made Hinata so fixated on achieving this goal that it resulted in him making a huge defensive play.
As exhaustion sets in, Karasuno begins to lose control. Then in a moment of absolute brilliance, Hinata sends a high first touch, a slow toss that allows Karasuno to breathe and regroup. Karasuno tries to finish the game here, but Inarizaki is able to keep the ball up again.
The Mia twins are desperate to end Karasuno's momentum, and the twins attempt their freak twin quick attack again. But this time, Hinata and Kageyama read this moment perfectly, and they rose together to block the freak twin quick attack. Thanks to their blocking chemical reaction, the ball lands on Inarizaki's side of the court, and Karasuno wins the last set, winning the match against Inarizaki. As the whistle blows, Karasuno advances to the third round, leaving Inarizaki in the crowd in stunned silence. They went from a team relying on Hinata and Kageyama to a collective egotistical force.
The match truly ended up being a brilliant battle of egos, with each team displaying some of their best plays with flow and chemical reactions across the board. Thanks to this win, Karasuno can finally live up to the generational promise of the Battle of the Garbage Dump as they finally play Nekoma in an official match.
Both teams have been looking to crush each other and secure a victory in the first official Battle of the Garbage Dump. Both Nekoma and Karasuno were in complete flow states during this match, and everyone brought their A game. Karasuno were going on these great runs due to Kageyama seamlessly orchestrating the offense.
In addition to all this, Sugishima and Yamaguchi combined to form a formidable serve and block chemical reaction.
On the other hand, Nekoma were sticking to their usual game plan by keeping up with the high-flying crows through an analytical and defensive approach. Throughout that first set, Nekoma's blockers were doing a great job in limiting Karasuno's options. Thanks to the blockers' presence, Haikyuu had a much easier job to accurately read the gameplay and make these effortless saves for Nekoma. In some phases, it even felt like Haikyuu was in a complete flow state.
Besides Haikyuu, Kenma was having a great game as well. You could see that he was just fired up by the idea of challenging Hinata in a real game, and this brought out a new competitive and hungry Kenma. The most surprising moment was the final point when Kenma dumped the ball to Karasuno's side of the court to win the first set. He was just 3 steps ahead of everyone and managed to manipulate the entire team.
Kenma is a talented learner. He uses his brain to create new ways to manipulate Karasuno, especially through a sense of egocentrism, where he's able to observe and use the team's behaviors and habits to his own advantage.
This play reminds us of something that Isagi would do. We say this because Kenma is moving accordingly through the understanding of his opponent's perspectives, and he uses it to his own advantage, twisting hope and despair like Isagi using his egocentrism in the Neo-Egoist League.
As the game's pace was starting to accelerate, both teams were displaying their philosophies, Karasuno persevering through their high-flying, free-flowing attacking style, while Nekoma were displaying their tenacity through their rigid defensive prowess. As the set continued, Nekoma was starting to target their serves at Hinata in order to cut him out of the game. This tactic ultimately limited Karasuno's attacking options and allowed Nekoma to set up strong counters by either blocking or receiving Karasuno's hits.
Nekoma's plan was finally taking fruition. Once Hinata returned to the front court, he was getting destroyed by Nekoma's blockers. Kenma knew that Nekoma's greatest threat was the chemical reaction between Kageyama and Hinata. It's an issue that every team Karasuno faces has to be worried about. Nekoma properly planned for this, and we saw that Nekoma was ready to restrict Hinata and Kageyama's freedom. Not only that, Nekoma was also exploiting Nishinoya by making him save the ball in certain spaces on the court, so Hinata's approach for spikes would be cut off. By doing all this, Nekoma was able to sever Hinata's wings and take him out of his flow state.
The restrictions placed upon Hinata especially had a huge negative impact on his ego and presence. This cage pushed Hinata into another phase of despair. He was really feeling the shackles that Nekoma had on him. He was desperately trying to break free. Freedom egoists like Hinata can only perform their best when they have the freedom to create their winning formulas. However, Kenma and Nekoma were doing such a great job in restricting him, it truly felt like Hinata was a caged bird.
And we talk about this a lot throughout this video, but Hinata and Kageyama were shown to have freedom ego types. Kageyama in particular is at his best when he's orchestrating the tempo at a fast and free adapting pace. He was also being caged by Nekoma, and he was being pushed into despair as well. With the duo being pushed to rock bottom, Kageyama decides that this is the perfect moment to challenge Nekoma and use a completely new chemical reaction, the high set with Hinata's new super jump.
With his back against the wall, Hinata and Kageyama break Nekoma's cage by adapting to their disadvantage and creating a new chemical reaction. And of course, the duo just evolves again and breaks out a new top performance-like play. Hinata's growth against Nekoma solidified his journey because at this point, you could even make the argument that Hinata is better and more of an important player to the Karasuno team than the legendary giant who first inspired them.
The second set even ended with Karasuno winning, but only because of Hinata's big defensive play. When Nekoma tried to use their own synchronized attack attack, Hinata was able to perfectly read it and get in the ideal position for a dig. He was able to return the ball into Nekoma's court, shocking everyone and winning the second set for Karasuno.
With that big play, each team has won a set, and we are now entering the final phases of the Battle of the Garbage Dump. Both teams are leaving everything on the court, and we are seeing some of the most exhausting and greatest back and forth rallies in all of Haikyuu.
As the set continued, it was clear that Karasuno had the upper hand. After dismantling that cage, Karasuno was back to being the high-flying crows, and they were destroying Nekoma.
They were able to completely overwhelm Nekoma and win the final set, declaring themselves winners of the first official Battle of the Garbage Dump,
completing the full circle moment for the new Karasuno team that we have been following since the first season. The Battle of the Garbage Dump encompassed all these egotistical themes like egocentrism, ego-driven moments, flow state, top performance, and chemical reactions.
I know Haikyuu and Blue Lock are still different in some ways, but both series still share a lot of similarities, and I hope you guys realize Haikyuu does have a lot of ego elements that can be explained through a similar process like in Blue Lock. And even though the stories might not have the exact same focal points or overarching stories, Haikyuu is full of chemical reactions, moments of flow, and egotistical characters. The story did start with a big focus on teamwork through the POV of Karasuno, but it eventually led to the evolution of themes like egoism, accepting ego and hunger as a core element, and bringing out each player's top abilities and potential.
And as always, if you did enjoy the video, please consider giving a like, comment, or subscribe to the channel. And as always, we do have a link to our community Discord, and that link can be found in the description of this video below.
Thank you for sticking to the end. It's Tev.
And it's Lotus.